In this video, we're going to talk about the square root property. So I want to solve this equation, x squared is equal to 16. Now, if we decide to solve this by factoring, I would subtract the 16. And that's a difference of two squares, which means I can factor. X minus 4, x plus 4. Set each factor that contains a variable equal to 0. And my solutions would be negative 4 and 4. Okay. Now, there is another way that I can solve this. So I'll rewrite again. X squared equal to 16. Now, I'm going to take the square root of both sides. Now remember, the square root of x squared, that's the same thing as the absolute value of x. And the square root of 16 is 4. Now, if you recall, with an absolute value equation, you have two solutions. You have x equal to 4, or you have x equal to negative 4. So notice I have the same solution for this. So what we have demonstrated here is what is called the square root property. So for any real number k, if x squared is equal to k, then x is equal to the negative square root of k, or x is equal to the square root of k. So the idea for this is to isolate the squared term on one side of the equation so that I could use a square root property to solve these equations. All right, so let's solve the equations by the square root property. So again, when I see 3x squared minus 9 is equal to 0, I'm going to add 9 and divide by 3. Now, I have the x squared term by itself, so I'm going to take the square root of both sides. Now remember, the square root of x squared, that is x, and I'm going to rewrite here plus or minus the square root of 3. So my solutions here is negative square root of 3 and positive square root of 3. All right, let's take a look at the next example. Now, notice the squared part is all by itself. So right now, I'm going to take the square root of both sides. Well, the square root of 3x minus 1 squared is 3x minus 1. Again, don't forget the plus or minus the square root of 20, square root property. So now let's pull out the perfect roots of 20. And that simplifies to 2 times the square root of 5. So add 1. Now, I like putting the plus or minus in between the two terms as such. And now divide everything by 3. So if I wanted to separate these two solutions, I would do this. All right, let's do the next example. Now, I want to get the squared part by itself, so I'm going to subtract the 1. And then I'm going to take the square root of both sides. Now, the square root of negative 9, that simplifies to 3i. So now to solve this equation, I'm going to subtract 5. So here are my two solutions. Okay, one other example I want to take a look at then. So again, I want to get the squared part by itself. So I'm going to subtract the 144 first. Divide by 2. And now I'm going to take the square root of both sides. Don't forget, it's plus or minus. Now, let's pull out the perfect roots of the square root of negative 72. So the square root of negative 72 is 6i times the square root of 2. So put it in. And now add 1. And here are my two solutions for this.